Well, I'm so delighted to be sharing the evening with all of you and with the opportunity to tell you about this fabulous woman, Caroline Dormon. And there's a lot to say, and so if you'll excuse, I'm going to read most of this because every word is important. So, this woman led a very full life and accomplished more things than we have time to cover tonight. She died 49 years ago, and there's a whole generation of people who have never heard her name. I'm going to touch on the highlights with hopes that each of you will want to know more. Uh-oh, how come it's not going?
Oh, is it not advancing?
No, it's not advancing. Oh, Lordy. Okay, let's escape.
Look in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. When you move your mouse, do you see little arrows on the? Let me see if I can advance. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. I'll just use that then. Okay. I'll conform. All right. So here we go. Caroline was a prolific writer, multimedia artist, an accomplished botanist, noteworthy archaeologist, an esteemed forester, school teacher, and tireless conservationist. Caroline's variety of occupations is quite impressive. When I look at this long list, I think to myself, is there anything that this woman can't do? Well, yes, she couldn't drive a car. However, she could handle a mule team that carried her to a teaching job and back home every day. Women living in this era were expected to marry, raise children, and do the housework. Yet from sunrise to sundown, her feisty determination drove her to share her deep knowledge of nature's ecosystems of plants, insects, and birds. To really appreciate Caroline's achievements, let's revisit her world of the late 1880s then and compare it to the world of today. Entertainment 132 years ago were simple pleasures of picnicking and strolling through a garden. In today's world, the list of entertainment choices is endless. But you see that some things don't change. We humans still love those simple pleasures. Forms of communication were very limited back then. Letter writing, newspapers, magazines, plus word of mouth at garden club meetings and church socials spread the news. Nowadays, everything is powered by electronic gadgetry, and we can view history live as it's happening halfway around the world. I find it amazing that this woman from this little town of Saline, Louisiana, was able to amaze master gardeners from all over the world with her talents and wealth of wisdom presented in her many interesting articles and fabulous books of her exquisite artwork. Fashions have definitely taken a giant leap of change. Imagine climbing a tree, digging a garden, or sloshing through a bog to dig an iris in that dress. Anything goes with modern fashions that are much more practical and definitely more comfortable. One of 5 children, Caroline spent her childhood years at Briarwood, their family's vacation home. Her father was a lawyer by profession, but avid naturalist for love. Her papa taught Caroline the names and habits of the animals, flowers, and wildlife. As they walked along the trails, Caroline began looking for longleaf pines, her most beloved trees. The ground was covered with goat's rue, with its pink and cream pea flowers. They stopped to watch masses of butterflies on the wildflower carpet. This was the legacy of Caroline Dormon, a family that valued the simple but beautiful joys of nature. In the April 13th, 1997 Times-Picayune article, Jeanette Hardy writes, there would be a cocklebur caught on the hem of her skirt, bits of leaves and pine needles or wisps of cobwebs and cocoons stuck to her shoulders, fair complexion, her hair braided into a crown or pulled back severely into a bun, straw-colored, eyes green as chlorophyll, conditioned to detect the barest flicker of movement. There have been many articles written about Caroline. She has been described as the Audubon of wildflowers, a female Thoreau, a wild goose, the prima donna of the plant world, a woman of many interests, one of Louisiana's foremost educators, queen of the forest kingdom, and my favorite, a tiny doll-like woman of granite will. You got to admit, that's impressive. Unheard of that a woman of that day and age would pursue a formal education. Caroline was educated at Judson College in Marion, Alabama, with a bachelor's degree in literature and art. For several years, she taught first grade singing and drawing in Bienville Parish schools. Boarding with a family in Provençal, Caroline made the 20-mile trip to Casacci School in a wagon pulled by a pair of stout mules. She noticed more than the dirt roads. She said, "Over the rolling hills we wound, through mile after mile of majestic longleaf pines. I was in heaven." In 1918, she reestablished her home at Briarwood, where she began to collect, catalog, and preserve native trees and shrubs. Her diversified career was filled with fascinating jobs that led her throughout the state. In 1922, she persuaded the U.S. Forestry Service to consider establishing a national forest in Louisiana. She also developed forestry education materials for schools and promoted forestry conservation that was supported by civic leaders. During that time, she was asked to identify the trees and shrubs in Audubon Park so they could be permanently tagged. Her work became noticed in and out of the state. Mississippi State Forester Roy L. Hogue wrote to Caroline, "We are very eager to secure your services for our state. I know no one else to whom I would be willing to entrust this work. Our commission would be willing to pay almost any salary in reason for this work because we consider it extremely important. So name the salary that you think might induce you to come over to Mississippi and help us." In spite of this name your salary offer, Carrie's loyalty to Louisiana could not be purchased, and Carrie's dream of a national forest was not diminished. In 1930, during the administration of President Hoover, James Aswell worked with Caroline to establish the Casacci National Forest. Wait, I think I went too far here. I'm sorry. Oh, Lord, how do you go back? Sorry. Here we go. I'm right now. Sorry. In 1941, she was hired as beautification consultant for the Louisiana Highway Department. There was not even a job title for this position. The Department of Civil Service sent employment forms to Caroline with her title listed as beautician, which she asked them to correct, explaining, "My work is quite different." And the title was not the only bureaucratic hurdle. She had to battle lack of concern, commitment, and organization, in addition to state budgets and politics. Also in 1941, the Board of Public Welfare employed her landscaping consultant talents to naturescape the Huey P. Long Charity Hospital grounds in Pineville. Her master plan involved keeping most of the existing plants, trees, and shrubs. She also planned a cutting garden so that sunflowers could be brought inside the hospital. Before the end of the project, the political situation changed and the funding was canceled. Caroline had to battle budget, funds, and politics, as well as the newcomers of political change. In 1961, the 301-acre Louisiana State Arboretum that she had proposed was dedicated. In 1964, Caroline was consultant for the popular Hodges Garden State Park and nearby Chico State Park. The Caroline Dormon Lodge opened in 1965 at the Arboretum, which serves as a nature center, library, and native plants herbarium. The Arboretum is a wonderful place to hike, observe nature, and learn more about Caroline. One of her assignments that piqued my curiosity was her involvement with the DeSoto Expedition Commission. Members were appointed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was established to study and provide a report to Congress that determined DeSoto's actual route discovering America, along with recommendations for a celebration of the expedition's 400th anniversary. Caroline was the only woman selected to join this team of prominent men. She knew that the Indians had played an important part in the explorations of DeSoto. For years, she had engaged in extensive study of early American inhabitants and explorers. She had corresponded with others who shared these interests, exchanging ideas and materials. Her theories were interesting and plausible. Caroline was honored with many prestigious awards, such as the Eloise Payne Lacquer Medal by the Garden Club of America, the Honorary Doctorate of Science from LSU in Baton Rouge for distinguished scientific achievement. She's had schools named after her, parks, and now her home is a visitor center. This is the plant that catapulted Caroline into worldwide fame, the Iris giganticeruleum, also called giant blue iris. Grew in bogs where most ladies of the day would not be walking. Caroline loved its exquisite color and giant size. When I visited Briarwood, I was surprised to see she had constructed a chain-link fence surrounding her iris bog, which sparked my curiosity. She must have really prized this plant to protect it with a fence. Word of mouth spread the news about this profoundly different plant, which made it a must-see and a must-have, and made her famous. The collection of Caroline's letters attest to professional correspondence with notable national figures, including the president's wife, Lady Bird Johnson, inventor Thomas Edison, garden writer Elizabeth Lawrence, famed botanist Dr. J.K. Small, and landscape architect Ellen Biddle Shipman. Thomas Edison asked for Carey's assistance in securing specimens of various kinds of goldenrod for his experiments to discover an alternate source of rubber to be used for Ford cars. Taken from a letter he wrote to Caroline while working at his Orange, New Jersey lab and dated June 27, 1930, Edison writes, "I would ask that you kindly send about 2 grams of the leaves of the goldenrod after the flowers have closed and the seed is ripening." For over a year, Carey collected leaves, stems, seeds, and roots. Edison shared with Carey the results of his experiments. Edith Stern, creator of Longview Gardens of New Orleans, befriended Caroline through a Garden Club of America roadside wildflower project. Their working relationship grew, as did their friendship, to the point where Edith was inspired in 1934 to finance the publishing of Caroline's first book, Wildflowers of Louisiana. Subsequently, Edith commissioned Caroline as a consultant for Longview to suggest and supply native plant selections and to place them in Longview's wild garden. This relationship continued from 1947 until her death in 1971. By the 1950s, Caroline became good friends with Frank and Sarah Gladney of Baton Rouge through Sarah's beautification projects. Sarah was deeply involved with the Garden Club Federation and was very intrigued by Caroline's fountain of plant knowledge and artistic talents. In 1965, Frank and Sarah, both avid gardeners, purchased a 360-acre land parcel in Gloucester, Mississippi. They began enhancing the already beautiful landscape of rolling hills and deep ravines by adding a wide variety of native plants. Meanwhile, for 10 years, Caroline had been searching for a publisher for her Natives of the Deep South book and was met with more misunderstandings and difficulties of contracting and financing. At one point, exasperated, she called upon Frank Gladney, who was a lawyer, to write a gentle protest to the publisher to help finalize the printing. These are all the wonderful books written by or about Caroline Dormon. I will now briefly describe each one. Wildflowers of Louisiana. In this wonderful book, Caroline expresses particular preference for certain plant attributes, such as fragrance, color, and leaf shape. The perfume of crabapples was a favorite, and she planted them all over Briarwood. Another was Indian pipes, a strange flower that grows like a fungus from decaying vegetable matter, which has no color, but which is a true flower and bears seeds. She liked shrubs with small leaves. She adored fluffy white flowers of spring and fall's colored leaves. Flowers native to the Deep South. I find it interesting that Caroline constantly preached conservation and preservation of the rapidly vanishing wildflowers. She specifies that she felt too frequent picking, misdirected efforts to move them to gardens, forest fires, and onslaughts of rabbits and insects was causing species to become rare. Almost 50 years later, this shows how some things have changed. Nowadays, wildflowers are vanishing because of the daily loss of green space due to ever-climbing human population and urban sprawl. Some of her best gardening advice was, if one attempts to grow native plants, their natural environment, soil, etc., must be studied and imitated. Caroline really loved particular native shrubs. One of her friends told her of a location where Stewartia grew, and to thank her, she later wrote to her, "If you had sent me a rope of pearls or a diamond tiara, you would not have made me half so happy." I love that. Caroline was already pioneering the Rethink Pretty motto in Natives Preferred. Throw out the window the idea of planting flowers in geometrical design, but be informal with softly rounded masses of foliage and flowers scattered freely. Caroline underscores the beauty of natives. Her descriptions are frequently lyrical. Dogwood whiten the hillsides, while every stream bank and low ground become a mass of dainty pink, the wild azalea. Grand Sir Graybeard puts on his fringe, and masses of lovely crabapples sweeten the air, while the ground beneath is clothed in bright blue and lavender violets, wild phlox, and verbena. Doesn't that sound luscious? Caroline advocated for education and support for the Choctaw and Chitimacha tribes of Louisiana. Southern Indian Boy has 2 stories describing the local Indian life. In addition to teaching Caroline about nature, her father instilled another interest, the children of nature, the Indians and their culture. Mr. Dorman obtained available bulletins and tracts about Indians and their culture. Caroline listened to her father read from those works before she could read, and she knew by picture many of the Indian chiefs. Bird Talk is a collection of many articles she had written for the Shreveport Times. Growing up in a small Louisiana town, she and her brother collected bird eggs and displayed them with the bird names that the children had given them, such as Top Knot, Tom Tit, and Bull Bat. I just wonder what they were describing with that. They were allowed to build a treehouse where they could watch the birds build their nests. Yes, she first learned the birds as a child, but it wasn't until she and Virginia moved to Briarwood that she had the opportunity to closely study birds. She is quoted to have said, "From the first, birds fascinated me, and my father, a very good naturalist, taught me their common names." The term bird watcher had not been invented then, but nevertheless, I became one as soon as I could walk about the yard. This book has little chats telling the things that she learned by living intimately with birds throughout her long life. The Gift of the Wild Things, The Life of Caroline Dormon. The fascinating and many-faceted career of this very unconventional woman is outlined by Fran Holman Johnson, who examines Dorman's childhood environment, her love of nature, her education, her brief career as a teacher, her relationship with numerous scholars, writers, and artists, and her success as a naturalist. Folks, when I began reading this book, I just didn't want to put it down. Wondering what she was going to do next held me intrigued and spellbound. Personally, I find her country sayings to be very descriptive and endearing. Some of my favorites are, "Trees are donning their green uniform. Fall brings a riot of color. Leaf miners are villainous rabbits. Willy-nilly. Hybridizing is meddling with God's business. Humbly thankful. My fingers are tingling for the brush. I'm scorching the typewriter ribbon to tell you this." Love that. Let's see. Well, shucks. I got to go back, folks. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Adventures in Wildflowers. The Timeless Writings of Caroline Dormon. Caroline published horticultural and gardening books and articles for more than 75 years ago. Yet her writings are still timely, still potent. This work is a collection of 50 of those articles first published in botanical and gardening magazines, including The American Home, Holland's Magazine, Home Gardening for the South, Flower Grower, and the Bulletin for the American Iris Society. Now, what did I do? I went backwards, didn't I? Oh, yep. I'm sorry. I got to get electronic gadgetry savvy here. Okay. Here we go. Once you go back, you got to go forward again. Okay. In October of 2019, my cousin Lisa Norman and I visited Briarwood Nature Preserve in Saline and enjoyed a personal tour given by David Johnson. I'd like to share a few of the highlights. Caroline is honored by an artistic bust that is displayed at her birthplace site. Several trails like this one invite visitors to explore and experience the raw beauty of the forest. In spring of 2019, Briarwood suffered a tornado that damaged the roof of every building on the property. This is Caroline's home. I just love the baskets hung under the porch ceilings as an invitation for birds to nest. Grandpappy. State co-champion longleaf pine was Caroline's favorite tree. In many ways, Caroline was like the 250-year-old longleaf pine she named Grandpappy. Both of them were beautiful creatures of nature who had survived. When foresters told her that she would probably outlive Grandpappy, she countered, "I know better. My very soul lives in that beautiful, gnarled, and weather-beaten tree." Oh my, the tales he would tell of this rugged survival through the storms of life. Caroline created Wings Rest Pond because she envisioned that Grandpappy's reflection would look pretty on the water. Such a visionary. The camera cannot capture the true beauty of this sight. Caroline loved sharing her beautiful Briarwood plants. Through the years, she exchanged seeds, plants, and information with the Irish Society of London. She also supplied the Royal Botanic Garden at Kew with seeds of various plants. She sent birdfoot violet plants and dwarf iris to Japan and New Zealand. Briarwood literally blooms around the world. The writer's cabin. I can just imagine how being inside this retreat would inspire her to paint and write. In the last years of her life, as her health and her mobility diminished, she found comfort in her bird friends. She said, "Alas, my trampling days are over, a bad heart and a crippled hip, but my window by the fire looks out on a beautiful wild woodland where I can sit and watch birds." I can picture in my mind that she would sit for hours thinking about which topic she would compose next. She would sit by the cozy fire with her faithful dog and look out the window to the great outdoors. She would say, "Aren't the rains delicious?" I'm just curious and want to see what surprise will meet my eyes on the other side of that hill. It's so inviting. She said, "I simply loved nature, always, and could not more have stopped studying birds, flowers, and trees and drawing pictures of them than I could have stopped breathing." So happy to see Caroline smiling. She's always pictured as serious and determined. This is a Christmas card she sent to one of her neighbors. I'm hoping that this presentation will inspire you to read her books and visit her beloved Briarwood. Experience the beautiful rambling trails filled with new blooming surprises with each season, and you'll know how nature inspired her to draw its splendor and preserve it for generations to come. Check out the website at briarwood.org. I am better known as the NOLA Bug Lady. I have raised butterflies for over 40 years, and last year self-published my first book, Bug Lady's Butterfly Summer. It's packed with 15 exciting adventure stories about my discoveries while exploring woodland trails and raising Louisiana butterflies. At the beginning of each chapter, you'll see the life cycle of the butterfly. And then as you're reading the story, you can recreate the scene in your mind. And then as you visit your garden or out on a trail and you see these things, you'll recognize them because they'll be in your head. We sneak in the knowledge. Knowledge plus fun equals learning. So all of the books that we've described are available at my store or online on my website. You can reach me at nolabuglady@gmail.com. You can send me pictures of plants or bugs that you'd like identified. Also, check out my Facebook pages and my websites, barbaralaboratories.com and nolabuglady.com, to see the upcoming scheduled events. Hopefully we'll have some in next year, and the list of available plants for each month and pictures of my butterfly projects. This is where you'll find me Monday through Friday, 9:30 to 5 at my store located at 6444 Jefferson Highway in Harahan. I invite you to visit my store and enjoy my gardens. You can see my Louisiana certified habitat filled with both nectar, butterfly nectar, and caterpillar host plants. The Louisiana Certified Habitat Program is a new program through Louisiana Native Plant Society, and also NPI, the Native Plant Initiative. And I was the third. I wanted to be first, but I was third to be qualified. You can see me standing there with my sign, and you can see that I'm gold. I am gold level. They have different levels. You can start, silver, bronze, gold, but we want to be gold, right? So that means you have to have 75 species of native plants. Now, the garden that you're looking at there 4.5 years ago was grass, boxwood hedges, and non-native azaleas. So see what can be done. I have 99 species of plants on my little piece of property there in the front and the back. So it's ever changing. You'll have to come and explore and see it. The other things I'd like to tell you is that in September, I was featured in the Inside Northside magazine. You can see it online, the September issue. I'm on page 39 through 41. It's a nice little article. And I also did a podcast with the Nature Nerd. So you can check out her website, Nature Nerd with Lane. Lane is a wonderful lady. So those are some ways that you can contact me, come and see me, come and visit me, send me pictures, and any questions. So that's about it. You got any questions? I don't hear anything.
Okay, so are you, I'm sorry, I lost the button. Let's see. Let me see if
I
can,
hear you.
How do we? Okay, so how about this? If anybody wants to, yeah, let's all, yeah, you do have reaction buttons. So if anybody wants to I see people are clapping their hands.
Is there some way I
And I'm
can go back to that
everybody
screen?
feel free to, does anybody know where oh, I see.
Can I
Unmute
go
all.
back to that
Sorry.
screen and then?
My apologies. Okay, now everybody's unmuted, so feel free to ask Linda questions.
Okay.
Or you may have to, you have
I need to
permission
bring
to
that back
unmute
up?
yourself. You may have to go to the button that's the microphone and click on the red button, click on it to unmute yourself. Or if somebody wants to raise their hand to ask a question, I can unmute them. So Linda, I'll ask a question. Tell us where Briarwood is, how far it is from, say, New Orleans.
Okay. You drive up to Alexandria and then it's about a 30-minute, I would say probably about, well, wait, no, you got to get to Natchitoches. That's right. You got to go to Natchitoches and then it's about 30 minutes from Natchitoches. So it's a little tiny town. Make sure you have a map or a GPS. It's a lot of little turns.
What's the COVID-19 situation there? Do you know? Are they open to the public or?
You know, they're only open certain times of the year. And I think they got hit with Hurricane Laura kind of bad. But they're still cleaning up from the tornado from last year. But I would just say, call them and talk with them. Rick Johnson is so nice. Just give him a call and just leave a message or send an email and they'll communicate with you.
Great. Thank you.
But I know they really like you to call and let you know that you're coming, you know, or you'd have to, they don't let you just wander around. There's a little cart and they take you around and let you see what they want you to see. So. And that might have just been because of the hurricane. I mean, the tornado, that some of the trails just weren't passable yet because they lost a lot of trees. When you first enter Briarwood, you want to just say, oh, when I first saw it, the first thought that went to my mind was, I'm glad Caroline wasn't here to see the devastation. But, you know, once those trees are down, other plants are going to grow where the sun is going to hit. So it's evolving. And also the Gloucester Arboretum is a great place to visit. I was talking about that earlier. It's 360 acres. They do have a website and it's a beautiful place. I hired Mac Alford. He's the botany teacher at Southern Mississippi, University of Southern Mississippi. And we did a botanical survey of the property and identified 456 different plants. So there's a lot to see on that property.